Hello, and welcome to Dark Hearts with Stacy Lee. I've got a short episode for you to end the week. The Karen Read retrial has just begun. This case and this trial is going to go down in history as one of the craziest, most controversial, and in my opinion, worst miscarriages of justice we've seen in modern history. It remains to be seen on what level that miscarriage of justice will go down. If you're following this case, you know that Karen Read, accused of hitting her cop boyfriend with her car and killing him, well, her first trial ended in a mistrial, and the prosecution has very poorly chosen to retry her. It has taken me a long time to get to the point where I am willing to say this on camera, but I now believe that Karen Read is being framed. I believe in our justice system, and although it is not perfect, I always fall on the side of believing that if a prosecutor's office decides to bring murder charges, those charges are warranted. That is not the case with this murder. So it's a big deal for me to say that I believe someone is being framed. I do not believe that Karen Read hit John O'Keefe, a Boston police officer, with her car. Very briefly, for those who don't know, Karen and John were out drinking with a group of their friends, most of whom were cops. They went out on January 29th, 2022. There was also a snowstorm that night, which is important. After going to several bars, Karen and John drove to the home of Brian Albert. Karen pulled up outside and John went inside the house because Karen was worried that they might not be welcome in that house. The reason for that is a story in itself. So John goes inside the Albert home and he leaves Karen sitting outside in the car. He was supposed to come right back and let her know whether or not they were going to be going in. But 5 minutes goes by and then 10. And then Karen, who is very drunk and should not have been driving, gets angry and drives home to John's house, thinking he'd gone inside the party and forgotten about her. Karen falls asleep at John's house, and when she wakes up around 4:30 in the morning, John is still not home. So Karen gets in her car and goes looking for him. Karen and a couple of her friends then find John O'Keefe in the snow, lying on the front lawn at Brian Albert's house, and he is dead. The prosecution's case is that Karen was angry and that she backed into John O'Keefe as she was angrily speeding away from the house, killing him. That is not what happened, in my opinion. If you want my opinion and the opinion of the majority of people following this case, John O'Keefe went inside the Albert house that night where a fight ensued. Brian Albert's son, Colin Albert, did not like John O'Keefe because Colin Albert is a kid that was always getting into fights, and O'Keefe thought he was a troublemaker. There's also an issue with another man named Brian Higgins, who was exchanging flirtatious messages with Karen Read and had romantic interest in her. Brian Higgins was also inside the house. They could have gotten to a fight. It is the opinion of the majority of people watching this trial that either Colin Albert or Brian Higgins, or maybe both, attacked John O'Keefe. When that fight broke out, the family's dog, a large German Shepherd, also attacked John O'Keefe, leaving him covered in bite wounds up and down his arm. The fight went too far. John died, and then this group of drunk police officers and their wives went into cover-up mode, staging the scene to look as though John O'Keefe maybe got hit by a snowplow and ended up dead on the front lawn. But when Karen Read woke up and realized that John wasn't home and went looking for him, she started saying to her friends, "Maybe I hit him with my car." That's the story the friends are telling. There's even disagreement on whether or not Karen Read ever said that, but I think that was cleared up in the documentary that just came out on HBO. I think Karen did think she might have hit John with her car. When people heard her saying that, they were like, oh, we can pin this on Karen. Now, that is a gross oversimplification of this very complex trial. Many people watching this trial believe the judge is doing a terrible job and that she is biased. And I have to say there is some merit to those claims. The judge has disallowed any discussion of Colin Albert at all. And that is shocking. This kid was there. He was seen in the days following John O'Keefe's death with bloody knuckles, like he'd been in a fight, and he should most definitely be looked at as a suspect. The fact that the judge has ruled that they cannot discuss this kid is super shady. That ain't the only shady thing, but again, this is a short video today. The Albert family also got rid of the dog immediately after the death, and they won't tell anyone where the dog is. They obviously did this because these guys are cops, and they know that the dog's teeth can be forensically matched to the wounds on John O'Keefe's arm. Another issue, there is evidence that in the Sally Port at the police station, the Sally Port where Karen Read's car was taken into evidence, that the cops broke her taillight out and took the pieces of red plastic and scattered them on the lawn at John Albert's house, making it look like the taillight was broken when Karen hit John. There's actual video of this, but it is somewhat difficult to see as cops are standing at the back of the car. The car is kind of obscuring the view from the camera. But then we find out later that the cops took the video of the car being pulled into the Sally Port, inverted it, redid the timestamp on it to look like it wasn't inverted. There is so much going on with this case. I covered it briefly months ago, but so much more has happened. So I just wanted to bring you a short update today. So here's the update part. It's hard for me to know how much my viewers have seen and how much they already know. So forgive if you already know. And if you don't know, there's a little bit of backstory. On April 1st, 2025, just days ago, Karen Reid's retrial began. So far, they have seated 10 jurors. They have to pick 12. They got up to 6 and then they dismissed a couple. Then they got up to 7 and dismissed a couple. But so far they've seated 10 jurors. Now, the last time this was tried, a lot of people were getting updates from a man named Aidan Kearney, who is a blogger that goes by the name Turtle Boy. Well, in October of 2023, he was slapped with a gag order and then arrested. Again, this is a story all on its own. This whole case is crazy. There will also be a major change in the way Karen's defense team views this case because, again, this is crazy. I've actually never heard of this. A juror from the first trial, an alternate juror named Victoria George, is now one of Karen Reid's attorneys. Yes, you heard that right. Victoria George was not selected to sit on the main jury in the first trial because the judge believed she was biased, but she sat through the trial as an alternate juror, which means she was privy to discussions that took place in the jury room, the jury that could not decide on a verdict in the first trial. Well, Victoria George is an attorney, and she is now part of Karen Reid's defense team. This, of course, gives the defense an incredible insight into what the jury on the first trial was saying, the way they were leaning, what they were leaning towards or against. There's more big news. Karen's attorneys attempted to get 2 of the 3 charges against Karen dropped after they said that juries on the first trial made a unanimous decision to acquit her on 2 of those charges. Those charges are second-degree murder and leaving the scene of a crash causing injury or death. Karen's defense is arguing that retrying her on those 2 charges that the jury was going to acquit her of constitutes double jeopardy. That's a bit of a stretch. Judge Canton denied the motion, so Karen Reid's team appealed to the Supreme Court, which upheld the decision to deny the motion. So Karen Reid is still going to trial for a second time, charged with all 3 counts. As if this were not enough, there was a huge bombshell just days ago when Massachusetts State Trooper Michael Proctor was fired from his job. I'm telling you guys, each and every one of these little subjects could be its own story. Michael Proctor, again, a state trooper, testified in the first trial, but he was fired on March 19th for some appalling text messages he exchanged about Karen Reid and the trial. Believe me, we will be doing a deep dive on this trial, and we are going to talk about all of this in depth. A few weeks ago, there was a massive issue in the courtroom when 2 expert witnesses in the area of crash reconstruction who testified for the defense at the first trial, their names are Daniel Wolf and Andrew Rentschler, presented themselves as impartial. Well, in fact, they worked for ARCCA and they were hired by Karen Reid's defense team. They presented themselves as impartial, but they were not impartial because they were charging Karen's defense attorneys $23,000 to testify. Now, the prosecution wanted these 2 expert crash witnesses barred from the second trial. The judge is going to allow these 2 witnesses to testify in the second trial, but they cannot represent themselves as impartial. They must admit that they are being paid. Again, this is just a brief skimming update. I know people are going to want to come in and say, you didn't talk about this, you didn't talk about this, you didn't talk about this. I know. This is a 10-minute short. There is so much more going on in this case. I am keeping a timeline of events on my computer, and when this retrial is over, we are going to go step by step through this entire story. It will probably be an hour-long episode, maybe longer. This case has been fascinating and horrifying and disturbing to watch, but there is no question in my mind or the minds of most people watching that we are witnessing major corruption taking place right before our eyes. I will keep you updated as the trial progresses because whatever happens, it is going to cause quite a stir. Enjoy your weekend, my friends. Hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more from me. I will be back with you on Tuesday with a regular episode. I'm going to keep doing my deep dives on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I'll call them mid dives, my 30-minute episodes. I've just started adding these little weekly updates to bring you up to speed on things that are happening now. Stay safe and be kind to each other. And I will see you next week on Dark Hearts with Stacy Lee. Bye.